Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll get going in just a couple of minutes. We'll let a few more people trickle in.
Hello, this is John. I'm going to try to get my video working if you don't see it.
All righty.
But you can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Swap shared screen. What do I do here? Let's see.
Right beside your mute button, there should be a button that says start video.
Yeah.
There you go. That should work.
Hey,
hello.
Hello.
Nice
I'm
to
John
see you.
Tellis with Timberline.
Nice to see you, John. We'll get going in a minute. We'll just give another minute or two to let a few more people join. How are you doing, Emily, on a numbers count?
We are at 32 total.
Okay. Do you want me to give it a couple more minutes?
Now we're at 33. Let's see. I think we're good to start.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure we'll have a few more people join us. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you. We'll do some introductions in a minute. But yes, today we're doing the Travel Oregon Regional Co-Creation Lab. So thank you all for making the time to participate. We've got a full agenda and lots of really great collaboration on the books today. So quick agenda overview. We'll do some introductions, like I said, and some housekeeping. And then I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Strategist, William, who will kind of take it back on the journey we've been on with Travel Oregon on this transformational strategy. We started working with them in February. And then we'll start to set the stage for our discussion today about the vision of tourism for the state of Oregon and where we want to go. And then we'll start to look at how do we get there? How do we bring that vision to life in a series of a couple exercises with a break between? And then lastly, talking a little bit about attracting visitors and who the visitor is that we have the opportunity to focus on. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about preview of next steps. So after these workshops, what does that process look like as we get to the transformational strategy? So quick introductions from our team. We're Destination Think, and we've been working with Travel Oregon, like I said, since February. So today we have a full team who will be facilitating the discussion, and I will turn it over to William, who can talk to you a little bit about his background. William.
Thanks, Shannon. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time out of your day to join us today in this important workshop. My name is William Bucker, and I am the Chief Strategist at Destination Think, and I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Musqueam people, also known as Vancouver, British Columbia. Like Shannon said, we are a global agency. We work with destination marketing organizations like Travel Oregon all over the globe. So, we were doing these virtual things, way before COVID made us all do this. And it's really nice to be at the stage where we are. We'll give you a little bit of background. I had the pleasure to speak at your governor's conference a few years ago. Maybe some of you have met me there. So it's really nice to be back in Oregon, virtually at least, to facilitate this workshop. Some of you might have seen the video that we sent out as part of this invitation, and there was a guy with another accent. His name is Frank. He couldn't be here this afternoon. You know, time zones. You know, he's been doing a lot of overtime, so we gave him the night off. I'll be your lead facilitator for this session. But you're in good hands because I got a crack team with me, starting with Rebecca. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thanks very much, William. Yep, we have a pretty solid team for you here. My name is Rebecca Godfrey. I'm another senior strategic consultant with Destination Think, and I am based in Toronto in Canada. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it's now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I'm very excited to be here today to learn more about your region of Oregon. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. My name is Amy Bjarnason, and I will be a facilitator today, leading one of the breakout rooms. So I look forward to speaking to some of you very closely and hearing more about your areas of Oregon today. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Squamish and Lil'wat nations. And one interesting thing about these nations that I would like to share is that they were traditionally oral societies. They didn't develop written language until in the 1970s, but it's very interesting to read about the role the storytellers had in these nations and how they were historians. And I know storytelling has come up a lot so far in my work with Travel Oregon. And I'll pass it over to Bhupesh.
Hi, this is Bhupesh here. I am also the facilitator today, helping the team out with the conversations. I have never been to Oregon, so the task would be for you to sell Oregon to me, and I would love to know more about it. So it will be fun talking to you. I'm talking to you today from the traditional territory of Coquitlam people, and I'm also based in the Vancouver, BC area, pretty much at the outskirts of Vancouver. So I have the main city of Vancouver an hour away from me, and the green fields of Fraser Valley about half an hour from me. So I enjoy both sides of the world there and would love to kind of talk about Oregon with you, team. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Neville. I'm a project manager here at Destination Think. As Shannon will cover in a little bit, I'll be your go-to for any tech issues that come up, hopefully not. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, so I'd like to recognize the traditional territories of the Ute and Arapaho nations. I'm really excited to be here with you guys and hear the conversation today. So thank you for being here. Over to you, Shannon.
Thanks, team. And I am Shannon Landreth, a client strategist at Destination Think. I've been working with the team on Travel Oregon since the beginning, and really excited to collaborate with you all today. I am also just around the corner from Rebecca in Toronto, so we are on the same territories. So want to recognize that as well. So we would normally do introductions with everybody else in the call. I know we have a really great group, so I know that you'll get to know each other in the breakout sessions with each of our facilitators. So look forward to those introductions a little bit later on. A bit of housekeeping just to set the stage before we jump into our co-creation lab. If you are comfortable, I know some of you have your cameras on. If you are comfortable, we love to see your faces. Like William said, it is a challenge to sometimes engage with people in a virtual setting. We really wish we could have been there in person as originally planned, but we know sort of the elephant in the room with that. So if you can turn your cameras on to engage, especially in the breakout sessions, we would love to see your faces. If you're familiar with Zoom, there is a chat button right near your bar, close to your video and your mute. So if you feel more comfortable expressing yourself through the chat channel, feel free to do so. We will be looking at that frequently and try to address all the questions and comments in there. If you are not speaking, there is a lovely little mute button to just eliminate any background noise. And if you like to raise your hand, there's also a fun little raise your hand feature. Updating your Zoom name. We want to make sure we have everybody's name as per the registration list. So you can also hover over your face and there's 3 little dots that allows you to rename your Zoom name. We will have a break as well to make sure you get to grab a breath of fresh air, use the washroom, check your emails. And we'll have also breakout rooms for those exercises. If you do finish your session a bit early, feel free to come back to the main room and we'll keep moving with our schedule. And then lastly, we are recording a session purely for our team to distill all the insights after our call and make sure that we're capturing everything, including the transcript within the chat itself. Lastly, like Emily said, she is your tech support, but I am also around as well if you have any issues. So here we go. I'm going to turn it over to you, William.
Thanks, Shannon. So a little bit of background before we get into the conversations. I mentioned the video. Some of you might have watched it. If you haven't, no problem. We know everybody is busy. So I'll just quickly summarize it, but I won't spend too much time. So where are we in this process? We are at the co-creation lab stage, which means that we're engaging with each of the 7 regions to provide input specifically into what's relevant to you as a region. Now, the story that Frank likes to share, and I'll now share on his behalf, is from a Japanese philosopher called Koji Karamtami. And Frank is a bit of a philosopher, so he likes to bring philosophy into his conversation. And so what's happening, right, in tourism, not just in Oregon, but everywhere in the world, but very, very relevant in Oregon is, a changing environment, both because of the effects of tourism and the recognition that tourism isn't always by definition something that only brings good things to places. But also tourism in the context of the pandemic, in the context of the impacts of climate change, and what have you. And I think, that's very, very real, has been very, very real in Oregon over the past few years. So what Koji and Karamati is saying is that, it's easy to build a boat, but it's very, very, very hard to rebuild a boat while you're in the middle of the ocean. So we need to recognize that what we're working on is, like Todd, the CEO of Travel Oregon, likes to call it a transformational strategy. But we recognize that transportation needs to happen while we're continuing to run businesses, while we're continuing to welcome guests, while we're continuing to provide jobs. So on the next slide, you can see a little bit of the process that we're in, where we came from and what we've done. So this is kind of our strategic process at a high level. We start by framing out the project, then we really do a situation analysis to fully understand where we are. And as part of that, we ran some sessions during the last governance conference, where some of you might have participated in some of the sessions that we ran there. We did a pile of research as well. We interviewed everybody at Travel Oregon. We interviewed many industry stakeholders as well. And with that could, give us a bit of a direction of where could we be? Where are our ambitions? Where are our mandatories? What is our tolerance for risk? And then we're at a stage of, where do we want to go based on those options? And that's part of the conversation that we're going to have today. But then also, how do we get there? So, we're going to have 4 exercises that we're going to do today in breakout rooms that are framed around these choices, because that's why they're called collaboration labs, because we want to do this with you. And then the last step is how do we then get there? How do we measure it? How do we adjust? And what have you? So what have we completed so far? You can see there's been a ton of engagement. Like I said earlier, everything that's been produced so far, we've learned a lot. And now we're in the middle of one of these 7 regional co-creation labs. We did one the other day in Willamette. We've had a focus group with Oregon's tribes. We did a workshop with the leadership from the regional tourism organizations. We just completed this morning a 1.5-day workshop with all staff members from Travel Oregon. And we're also going to run various focus groups with the BIPOC community with the help of some other consultants as well. So on a high level, what have we learned so far? Well, you can summarize the learnings in really 3 quotes. The first one is around social, the second one is around economics, and the third one is about the environment. This came through in many conversations that tourism has traditionally been a conversation about economics, right? How much revenue does tourism bring? How much job does it create? How much taxes does it generate for local places? But now, around growing the visitor economy, there is a need to create a unified story, and also recognizing that in different parts of the state, there are different needs. Socially, of course, has become a major part of society around the world as well. We're going through some changes where we recognize that wealth and benefits are not always equally distributed, and as well in the tourism and in the visitor economy. So, but related, residents are also starting to wake up to the fact that tourism doesn't always bring, positive impacts on places. And what we've seen in Europe, we've worked with some European cities. That's of course, ground zero for over tourism. And because of the exposure in the media and what have you, all of a sudden everybody in every part of the world has an opinion about, what they think about tourism in their places. So there's a bit of a wake up from residents about the visitor economy as well. And then, needing a better representation for all communities, whether it's less visited places, but it could also be communities that are not about geography. So I'm thinking about BIPOC communities, the tribes, LGBTQ, and what have you. And then the last one is, of course, environment, which has become very real in Oregon with the forest fires. So becoming better stewards of the land, so that we are protecting our natural assets, that we're making sure that they can be that residents can benefit from them as well, and on a bigger picture context, also thinking about climate change. So those are the 3. Those are the shifts that we've seen, not just in Oregon, but in Oregon, quite often more vocal than in other places about the need to look at these things holistically. So we concluded a lot of these findings in combination with an organizational assessment of Travel Oregon, because with this transformational strategy, we also want to look at how does Travel Oregon need to evolve in order to deliver on the strategy and support industry as we move forward with tourism. So a lot of talk about destination management. So what does that really mean? So we need to give that some definition. Destination management is also not just about fixing problems that are there. It's also about thinking ahead and making sure that, some of the challenges that could arise, don't materialize, and going a little bit further ahead in our planning, where usually plans were created for 2 years. We want to now take a more longer view, like where do we ultimately want to go? And also building that relationships with value to residents across the state. Adopt a win-win-win approach to strategy, which means, you know, a win economically, a win socially, a win environmentally, and then, like I said, you know, looking more at the long term. You know, rethink how we conduct marketing. You know, we're not necessarily saying let go of traditional marketing. We're gonna stop advertising or anything like that. But really be smart about the dollars we spend and the people that we're targeting and how we're targeting them. And then, you know, recognizing that, you know, destination development really sits at the heart of destination management. Oregon's brand is incredibly strong and has only strengthened over the past few years. And, you know, I live in Canada, but I'm originally from Europe as well. And when you would go to ask, you know, a young person in Europe, in many places, you know, what they knew about Oregon 10 or 15 years ago, it probably wasn't much. They probably heard of Portland because of Portlandia, but Portland, Oregon as a brand has really strengthened, and you recognize that now. You know, a lot of people over there will be able to, you know, point to a map and say that's Oregon and that's what Oregon is about, and that's a true testament to not only Travel Oregon, who has done a phenomenal job building that brand, but also everyone in the industry delivering on it. You know, thinking about strategically to work with stakeholders and really empower them to move things forward strategically and build that social license with residents so that tourism continues to be supported. Climate change, you know, was a conversation that came up over and over again. So really put that at the heart of the destination management strategy. Oregon wants to lead by example, not just in climate, but also when it comes to issues related to DEI, building, you know, working towards building an inclusive, diverse, and equitable economy. And with that, you know, we need to review what we measure and how we measure them. So that was a little bit of the setup. So we're going to start with, you know, where do we want to go? And Frank gave you some homework in the video if you watched it. And in that, he shared the vision for travel in Oregon as it stood. So we're not saying it's good, we're not saying it's bad. You know, we just want to know how this speaks to you and what you would change, what you would keep, or, you know, any other comments you have, or even what it means. So that's the conversation we would like to start with. So we want to start at that big picture, right? What is our vision for tourism in Oregon? So in order to do that, we're going to go to our breakout rooms so that we can all have an opportunity to share. It's hard to do with 39 people in one room. In person, it's hard enough, let alone virtually. That's why we got some other facilitators so that we can have a meaningful conversation about this. So let's go to our breakout rooms and have those conversations, and then we'll share back when we go back to this room.
You'll have a pop-up that comes up on your screen, so you just click on that and away you'll go.
Bill.
Doing well.
Hello, everyone. Emily, how much time do we have for this?
Let me double check that, Bhupesh. I think we might be a little ahead of schedule, so we'll have a few extra minutes.
Yeah, no, I think we have time in the meantime to just do a quick introduction as well. So what we will do is a quick introduction around the room. we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, 7, 8, 9 people. Yes. So let's do a quick, if you can call out your name, where are you from, and what have you been doing, and a quick, what is the place you really like going to or visiting? I mean, just do a quick round the table. I have Lizzie first with me, and Lizzie, if you can start the conversation, please.
Sure, happy to. I think I know everybody in the room. My name is Lizzie Keenan. I am the regional coordinator for the Mount Hood and Columbia River Gorge region for Oregon. So thank you all for showing up to this meeting for our region. A place that I like to go everywhere. I just went to the San Juan Islands for the first time, and that was exceptionally beautiful. So I'd go back there.
Okay. John.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for taking some time this afternoon. It's great to see everyone. I'm the Director of Marketing and PR for Timberline, and I think Timberline is a great place to go.
And I have Eileen with me. Eileen, I hope I'm calling your name correct. Eileen, you're on mute. While you're sorting that out, I'll hop on to Lynn.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Burdett. I retired from the Forest Service and have worked or lived in Oregon or Washington since 1989. And I'll just follow John's lead and say any place in the Columbia River Gorge is a great place to visit.
That's awesome. I have Greg next to me.
Hi, I'm Greg Eckhart, Director of Sales with Travel Oregon. Speaking of the Gorge, I just recently went to Gorge's Beer Company and fell in love with it, Cascade Locks. So I'll go with what I've seen that's recent and new. Not that Timberline isn't amazing, Sean.
That's awesome. Samara, you're next.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm Samara Phelps. I'm the Executive Director for Oregon's Mount Hood Territory, Clackamas County Tourism, and I have the pleasure of working with Lizzie as the RDMO for the Mount Hood and Columbia River Gorge. And one of my favorites is Milo MacGyver State Park outside of Estacada and along the Clackamas.
That's awesome. Valerie.
Hi, I'm Valerie Egan. I'm a regional transit coordinator with ODOT for the Portland Metro region, which includes Mount Hood and the Gorge as well. And so I really think about how people are accessing a lot of these destinations and how transit can be just another tool that is used in terms of that and tourism. And one of my favorite areas to visit is Central Oregon. There's just so much to do outdoors there. I really love it.
Before I go to the next, Emily, if you can check with Eileen, she left a note that I'm in a different room than my screen. So
yeah, but I'm gonna fix that for her. She, I think, was called in as well. So
okay,
no problem.
And I have Stan with me next.
Hello, Stan Hinatsu, the Recreation Staff Officer for the Forest Service for the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. Where do I like to go? Shoot, a lot of places. I think I'll pick the Oregon coast this time.
Oh, nice. I have Tara. I don't see your face, but I can probably hear you.
Yes, hi, I'm calling in. Tara Lingley, I'm the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Transportation. And my favorite place to go is to ride my bike on the state trail, any of the 3 sections that we have out in the gorge.
Nice. That's awesome. I think
we've got Eileen now. Both her phone and her face are in the same room.
Okay, sorry, Eileen, for the
Yeah, no worries.
technical, yeah, if I can.
Can you hear us okay?
Alan, can you hear us?
There, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was in a different chat room before. Since Zoom upgraded, it doesn't let you say you've called in to sync with your video anymore. So I think that might be the problem. So I heard somebody else's session to start with, so I have no idea what we're talking about.
We just having a quick introduction. If you can give me like I know your name is there, so if you can give us a quick, quick background and what place would you like to visit?
I'm with the Dallas Farmers Market. I'm also the managing director for HSMAI Oregon chapter, which is primarily Portland based, but I have 35 plus years in the hospitality industry. So I kind of bring my tourism background to the farmers market and am involved with the Dalles in the tourism area. Place I'd most like to visit is probably the Walala Mountains. I keep hearing they're beautiful and have not been there yet.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Emily, by the time you pull up the vision statement, I have it in front of me. I'll take a quick read at it, and there it is. So let's take a quick read at it. And I know you had the homework, so I'll let anyone start the conversation. If not, I'll probably pick one of you to start the conversation. Let's take a quick read at it. A better life for all the Oregonians through strong, sustainable local communities that welcome a diversity of explorers. Awesome. So who wants to start? What do you think of it? Do you align with it? Do you not align with it? Do you have any opinion whether we need to kind of change it? Lizzie, you are the first one on my screen. I'll start with you.
It's okay. I was just about to volunteer myself. Happy to start. So I think my first general thoughts were that, it's a good, strong vision statement. But what was interesting is I didn't necessarily see Travel Oregon in it necessarily from the start. Like, oh, is that? I don't know if everything Travel Oregon currently does is through that vision. And then a few other thoughts I had were, well, for all Oregonians is a great vision. It's also like a very big ask of tourism. And the part that says that welcome a diversity of explorers, I think it's one thing to welcome a diversity of explorers, and it's another thing to be welcoming to a diversity of explorers, because we can welcome as many different people as we want. That doesn't mean that they're going to feel welcome when they get here. And so that was kind of a syntax thing that struck me, and also a diversity of explorers. And so just curious, how people are identifying or defining the word explorers, because I think it's often associated with a kind of adventurous spirit, and there's a lot of different ways to visit Oregon and to be a visitor here. And so I just thought that was interesting. But yeah.
Do you think explorer as a piece fits in with the Oregon?
Sorry, say that again. What do you mean?
Does the word explorer fits in with the overall Oregon kind of vision? Like, I know you said adventure. Are there pieces of adventure there that really fits in with this vision?
I mean, I think.
And you say it's not very prominent. Would you say that?
No, I mean, I think definitely lots of people that visit Oregon are explorers. I think my point was more, how is that term being defined? Because there's probably a lot of people that come and visit Oregon that better the life of Oregonians who stay in one spot and maybe don't like explore. Feels like you're really going out to a lot of places, but I think it's more just that's my personal definition. And I think other people have potentially different definitions or how they respond to the word explorer. So it was just, I don't know, brought up a question for me. That's all.
So, anyone else who would like to add? Aline. Aline had her hands up, so I'll start with her.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that it's interesting. Lizzie picked up on the syntax of welcoming to makes it more inclusive. I like the word explorer because it seems more active than visitor, and it to me makes me feel like someone's wanting to learn, not just visit. I like the local communities aspect because when folks are exploring, you're learning about local communities. And I like the sustainable part because it doesn't do anybody any good if everything's so overrun. It's just a tourist trap, as they used to say, and it no longer has its own local.
Interesting. We had Stan.
Yeah, the thing that I would add, and those who I've worked with before won't be surprised to hear this, that I think I like the word sustainable. Sometimes it's not well defined, but I think we need to include not just communities, but and I guess I'm speaking from my perspective as a public land manager, but that it needs to include that because much of the attraction for tourism is the beautiful landscapes that are mostly managed by public agencies. And I think it's important that we somehow fit that in there, that those beautiful landscapes need to be sustainable as well. And I think that piece is maybe not fully comes out in this statement.
Well, that's interesting. Anyone else like to add to it?
Yeah, this is John at Timberline. It's I'm struggling a little bit. I think it's smart to get buy-in from all Oregonians, but the purpose of a mission statement is to go back to that statement when you're trying to make substantial strategic decisions. And by definition, if you go back to this mission statement and say, is this creating a better life for all Oregonians? You're never going to have consensus, and the answer is always going to be no. So for me, it's I think it's smart to create the buy-in in the mission statement, but I think it's almost backwards. Like we need to talk about, the diversity of explorers and more about tourism first. Just my initial reaction, that's all.
I know we'll be kicked out pretty quick. Valerie, I know you had a point, and I might even ask you to do a quick recap of it in the main room.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, we are going to do a very quick share back, and each of our facilitators will share some top line notes from your discussion before we move on to our next exercise. Rebecca, let me start with you.
So we actually came up with a new one at the last minute, but I think some of the general things that we talked about were, if I go in order here, there was some discussion around a better life, and perhaps that was a little too subjective, and maybe a fuller life might be a way to sort of make it meaningful for everyone. Even all Oregonians, we thought was a bit elitist. Perhaps that could be all residents of Oregon. And then there was some debate back and forth about whether or not we need the word local communities. But we liked the idea of localhood. And a piece that was seen as missing was the guest experience. So when we talk about welcoming a diversity of explorers, there was a lot of discussion about the word explorer. We think that can be changed, and traveler was the word that our group sort of agreed upon, but also welcome a diversity of travelers, and the fact that we have a diversity of offerings, that needed to be added in. So the newest version that we came up with, if I can quote it here, actually, Kristen, do you want to say it?
Go for it, Rebecca.
I'm trying to find it actually in my notes here.
Okay, yeah, it's here in my chat thread. It was just an amalgamation of everyone's edits, which was a full life for all through strong, sustainable communities that welcome a diversity of travelers.
All right, thanks. Thanks for saving me there, Kristen.
Thanks, Rebecca and team. Great discussion. William, what about your group?
So I think we thought that everything is kind of in there, right? The all speaks to equity, the sustainability speaks to the environment. Welcome, diversity of explorers sort of means to being a welcoming host. But it was a kind of dry, it lacked energy and push was the quote. So we can probably create something that is a little bit more aspirational. When we talked about breaking it down specifically, better life for Oregons can include that we show some more of the diversity in cultures, for example, the Latinx community, and really share the stories in the way we project Oregon, but also make sure that they are part of the visitor experience. When it comes to a diversity of explorers, we thought there was a real opportunity to also build in some education and teach visitors about stewardship, and so that they take something real away from the experience there as well. We pointed some specific challenges related to sustainability in this part of the state is, water that's going to become a challenge in the Columbia River, but also on Mount Hood. It's currently often has the longest ski season without artificial snow. That's really under threat. Challenges around staffing and housing here as well, but also understanding that there's part of this region that can actually really do with a lot more visitors, while other parts of the region, might have different challenges. So it's not equal in all places like we hear in many other places. When we started to think about alternative, we talked about being a top destination for outdoor recreation that you can enjoy, but you also are responsible and know how to act.
That's great. Really good insights. Thanks, William and team. Bhupesh, what about your team?
We would have liked a few more minutes because I think we missed a few people. They were still talking, and I completely missed Valerie kind of expressing her view, but we will catch it up. Valerie, if you don't mind sending it in the chat as well, it would be great to capture that. Overall, we felt that the vision statement was, it covered quite a bit. There were concerns that you don't see travel Oregon in it overall. And what do you even mean by the word explorers? That was another question that came up overall. Is it limiting on one side, or but on the other hand, it was also felt that explorer is a good way of kind of showing, it shows learning in it. It shows that you are out there. It's an active word to describe the people coming in. The word sustainable was liked quite a bit, but it's not very well defined. That was one of the concerns. It becomes a little ambiguous for anyone to decide what do you even mean by sustainable. Again, the word welcome was felt to be limiting. I mean, it is, we can welcome people, but are we welcoming to the, and that was one of the question that was raised. Again, the last thing that came up was it's smart to be like kind of looking at all Oregonians, but it would be difficult to have a buy-in all across. I mean, it's again too wide to just say all Oregonians. It's just a little bit, it felt like it's not really honing it down what we really want to tell to people. That's pretty much it at my end. I hope I get the, I mean, I don't see in chat if Valerie had any point of view, so.
Thanks, Rupesh. And yes, if you have any other additional comments or questions or want to rewrite the vision statement, feel free to put it in the chat feature as well. I do know when we had our really great focus group with the tribes community, the word explorers came up quite frequently. To them, they actually found offense to it. So it's definitely a great time to kind of really think about what are those definitions, what do those terms and words mean to all Oregonians. So really great insights from your team there, Bhupesh. Amy, over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. And I just see Dan with his hand up. Dan, did you have something to add on the last point?
I'll just throw it in the chat, but yeah, since it was mentioned, actually, I'll just say it. Since it was mentioned, yeah, explorers feels very colonial to me. And so in critical theory spaces, there probably would be a large backlash to that. And I just kind of didn't want to say that if nobody else is on the same page. Also, I work with Kristen, which is based out of Hood River. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Yes, and that's exactly the feedback we got on the tribes call as well. So lots of different terms they suggested instead, such as visitor or traveler, but definitely taking a different look at the word explorer would be a good time to do so. Yeah, back to you, Amy. Thanks, Dan.
Great. So in our group, when we first really reviewed the statement, there was a lot of consensus that this was summed up quite perfectly for Oregon, and it resonated with people in the group. Upon diving in further and really breaking it apart and what it means to this region, we did have a conversation about the word explorers, and it came up that maybe guest would be a better term to the area. So we did have that conversation. And then just some conversations about it not being descriptive enough and what exactly does strong mean. For this particular area, they thought they wanted a resilient, what resonated with them best was a resilient community and economic sustainability. And there was some feedback that the statement seems to feel very inward looking and doesn't address creating value or giving aspiration for tourists and what they leave with. And then at the end, we spoke about just, are we making life better for all Oregonians? And we did question, is this happening for life of all groups in Oregon? So an example was the homeless population. And what are we doing to make life better for them? Thank you. In my group, if anyone has anything to add, please feel free to chime in or put it in the chat.
Great. Thanks, Amy and team. Okay, one exercise down. So now we're going to move into how do we bring that vision to life? What do we need to change to make that true? And I'll let William give you a little bit of a setup before we go into our next exercise.
Thanks, Shannon. So yeah, how are we going to get that together? And we're going to think about, this particular quote from Thomas Edison, because, you can have a vision for what you want, but that's not enough, because vision without execution is hallucination. And that's not what we want to do. So we want to talk about what needs to be true for your part of Oregon in order to achieve that vision, or whatever it's going to turn into. But I think we're all seeing what direction it's heading, right? Bring that value from an economic, social, and environmental perspective. So what do we need to do in order to actually achieve that? What are the roadblocks? What are the obstacles? What are the priorities? And what is the low-hanging fruit? So we're going to first talk about product and capabilities. So this is more the experience on the ground. So the products we offer, the experiences we offer, but also, you know, maybe the like in the capabilities, some of the knowledge that we need to acquire, or some of the services or infrastructure, you know, everything that is related specifically to the tourism experience. And then we're going to do an exercise where we're going to talk specifically about promotion. So we're going to separate them into 3 categories: social, environmental, and economical. We're going to go back into our breakouts where we can identify, you know, some of the topics that need to happen in each of these areas. It's a bit of a brainstorm, so, you know, there's no such thing as bad ideas or bad comments. We're not making any decisions here yet. We really just need input in what you think is really important, and then we're going to rate them for each of these items on how big is it on the scale of priority, and how hard is it, we think, to achieve it. Is it feasible or is it not very feasible? So that we can get some indication of where we think things align on that front. So let's go into our breakouts. Shannon or
All right.
Emily?
Thanks, everybody. And yep, we'll come back and do another shareback session as well.
You see my screen okay? Okay, awesome.
Yes, we do. Lizzie, I don't know why I feel like I know you from somewhere. I've seen you somewhere. Okay. So yeah, we wanted to discuss product and capabilities. The whole idea is, and kind of we can define what a product means. It's not promotion as we are kind of talking through it. It is kind of looking at various experiences in your region. What will be the future of tourism look like? And if we have to kind of look at social, environmental, economical factors, what do you really want to see that you would like to kind of address in your region? It can be anything. It can be wayfinding, it can be food experiences, it can be, so what we will kind of look at it from 3 different angles: social, environmental, economical. And based on your experience, where do you see it going from here? What are some of the actions you would like seeing happening? So who wants to start? And you can start from anywhere. I don't mind starting social, environmental, economical, so either or. Who's going to raise the hand? Who should I pick up? Valerie, I didn't give you the chance last time. I think you missed it. So we'll start with you first. And I think you are on mute.
I am on mute.
So,
Okay.
what are your thoughts on what products and capabilities would you like?
Yeah. I know, because it's, I need to think through it a little more.
Mm-hmm. So think of,
yeah.
Okay, I'll start with a little bit of a thing. What if I was to visit Oregon, and what would you like me to tell to be mindful of there? And let's start with that. Like if I go there and I'm coming there for, say, spending a week there, what are we looking at? What do I need to be mindful of?
I mean, I think environmental stands out a lot to me in terms of like a high urgency area. I think the feasibility there is a bit for environmental.
We can rank it later on. I mean, that's probably a secondary exercise. Right now, I just want to.
Oh, okay.
I just want to kind of look at the concerns areas or what products and capabilities. Yeah.
And is this for the whole state or for our region?
Oh, whole state as well. I don't mind that. Yeah, and we can hone it down. Like it becomes more specific for your region as well. So if you have seen some of it and you have experienced some of it. Like in one of the other workshop that I was part of, things like inclusion as a social thing was one of the factors. Wealth gap was one of the factors, and those were like from the social front. I'm just kind of throwing few pointers out there in your direction.
I know housing, workforce housing is a big issue, both in our region and across the state. For the tourism industry, and seasonality of jobs is another one that is a challenge in our region, which kind of also connects to workforce housing, wealth gap. I mean, there's a lot of key social services that I think are a challenge in our industry, especially around seasonal work.
So it's and the seasonality of the area is again it's all across the region. It's all across Oregon.
Yeah, well, I think so. I know our region a lot better.
I would say that we have too many people here. We need to spread it out. You know, there's too many people in the peak season. Not enough people are in the shoulder seasons. I think that from my point of view and a lot of my colleagues here at Timberline, infrastructure is of the highest feasibility before the Oregon experience starts to deteriorate because it's simply too crowded and there isn't enough support with facilities, transportation, general cleanup, getting around, crowds. Yeah.
Bathrooms. There's not enough bathrooms.
Trailheads, you know, bathrooms, trailheads, signage, parking, everywhere you go. It's so incredibly busy because Oregon is such a beautiful place, but we're definitely at a crossroads on how we solve this problem and maintain the experience.
So if we look at,
I would
go ahead. Sorry.
I would agree with John and Lizzie, and I think they go to the same issue, is that if we had more folks here in the shoulder season or had other activities in the off season, then that would help create employment for people year round. Economics are not such, and because we're not a densely populated area, there aren't people that can afford to just work during the summer or just work during the winter. If there were activities throughout the year and people could make a living and we could get folks to come over spread out over a longer period of time, that would be optimal. They go hand in hand, in my opinion. And that also speaks economically as well. Have jobs. If people in the area see the value in having visitors, explorers, tourists, guests, whatever we're going to call them, then they're more supportive as well.
What activities would you suggest? Like, how do you want? How can you break the activities across the season? Do you see like different seasons will be handling different things?
Yes. I mean, currently, yes, because we have Mount Hood, and we have, I mean, the Gorge still gets snow too, but there's a different winter product than there is other seasons.
So
winter and spring.
winter is more stronger there?
No, well, it depends on where in the region you are, but because winter on Mount Hood is very busy, winter in the Gorge is not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And-
But you know, summer in the Gorge is busy, but fall's a beautiful time of year. So is spring. No, I mean, it's not a bad place to just hang out in the winter, but there's not quote activities like there would be at in Line or someplace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I did see from the like you just kind of called it out, the congestion that is there all around. What are some of the other measures that can be taken to reduce that congestion in the area? Do you see how's wayfinding overall? Can people? I'm kind of just throwing a few pointers again just to see if anything sticks with you.
I mean, I would say wayfinding is good in some places in the region. I mean, we have a couple of specific thoroughfares to get you through the region, but some communities are just off of those main arteries. So like 84 and 26 are the main kind of ways to get around the region. So getting off of those and finding places off of those main highways probably could have better wayfinding. Mm-hmm. I do think because we have so much road congestion, and we've got transportation folks on this call, and there's been a lot of work around this, but continuing to move towards public transportation or shuttle options in the region and having more, I think, park and ride ability to just have less cars on the road is the future for our particular region.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think one of you pointed out the housing crisis as well, like in terms of not having enough places that way. Any thoughts around that? I think, John, you called it out about housing, yes?
No, that was Lizzie, but Lizzie hit the nail on the head for sure. If there's no housing, there's no people to work.
So what's the solution for housing? What are we going to do?
Right. Well, housing needs to be viewed as a cost of business these days. Mm-hmm. It's simply not. You know, it's a paradigm shift.
Our communities in the state as well, less so I think in our region, but especially on the coast, communities that have been fighting to retain housing for their own residents instead of foregoing that housing to Airbnbs and short-term rental opportunities, VRBO, et cetera. So that's a tension point throughout the state, particularly on the coast, where housing is only occupied a portion of the year by people who are visiting, and the sense of community in some communities is being eroded as a consequence.
Do you see there's an opportunity to tie up with something, say with Airbnb or VRBO?
I'm sorry, do I see it as a what?
There is an opportunity to tie up with organizations like Airbnb and VRBO to create more capacity?
If that means bringing more Airbnbs to those communities, I think those communities would say, no, not interested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it an opportunity to establish more formal lodging opportunities as opposed to lodging that's happening in people's homes? Possibly. I'm not an expert on that topic. I guess I was just pointing out an issue that needs attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tash, to your point, I don't know if this is what you were asking, but were you suggesting that instead of having folks with Airbnb, et cetera, rent out to visitors, have some sort of program where people could house workers?
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to see what are the possible options for us there.
So in my capacity, I work for city government. Tourism is not necessarily my main focus, but as I see it, as communities take control of their housing stock instead of having rental agencies take control of their housing stock, that regulation, as it's appropriate, will, I think, compel people to create more formal lodging opportunities. And when I say formal, maybe that's not the right term to use, but I'm talking about hotel, motel, retreat, resort type places. So right now, that demand to build more of those facilities may not exist because people are using Airbnbs so much, especially in concentrated parts of the state.
Yeah. How about, and I think one of the points that also got raised was around lack of workforce. That was another point that came up. I think Lizzie, you called it out, or John, you called it out. How can we address that? Any product, any capabilities that can be built around that?
Housing, you address it through housing. You know, I mean, specifically speaking for the mountain, not just for Timberline, but all the resorts and businesses up here. There's no place for anyone to live. So
I'd say that's also the same in the Gorge. Is there's either no there's no apartments for rent, so people can't come and take jobs out here, or they can't afford them. They're priced out of tourism employment.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're priced out of housing because of tourism employment.
The state of Oregon, for better or worse, in some cases it's better, in some cases it's worse, has a very unique land use program in the nation, has a heavy focus on conservation, especially of rural areas, and it makes developing housing in particular a challenge in unincorporated areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How is sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in here in the Gorge, we have the National Scenic Area, which building in certain places. There's a lot of places off of it, but.
Mm-hmm. And Lizzie, we were talking about like your specific area. Let's look at that now. And I'm kind of wondering, what are some of the challenges that you see, and how can that be addressed?
I think we've been discussing the my area is the Mount Hood Gorge region, and I think most of these examples are
fit in there. I mean,
yep.
Okay. So when I'm coming there, and I said I've never been to Oregon at all. Is it easy for me to find my way around, find areas, things like visitor centers are there for me to kind of go around? I'm just curious, what's the infrastructure looking like overall?
I think that the relevance of visitor centers and things like that have come and gone, you know, with everybody just having access to information all the time on their phones and being proactive with their research. So I think wayfinding and finding things to do is pretty accessible for most people, I think.
So for you, what would be the future of tourism in your area? Like, what do you see? Where do you see it going, and what do you need for that?
Infrastructure, housing.
I know. So that's, but again, the land use becomes one of the big concerns there. And how do you kind of manage that?
Well, I don't agree with that. It comes down to economics, and people aren't going to invest in workforce housing if it's not affordable. You know, they're going to invest in where you know, they can kind of make the most money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I heard from people like I was checking it out. Coming and staying there for a night was over $600 a night, and that's and that's super expensive.
Where's that?
I was checking in that area, like the hotels were all fully booked, and I checked, like the only thing that I could see was like $600 a night to come and stay. And I said, okay, that's during the summer, I was kind of just curious to look around. So it felt a little kind of out of whack there.
Yeah, I would say 600 is not the norm,
Mhm.
but this in our region at all. But the summer does sell out, and so ADR has increased. But I think, you know, our region is a relatively, I'd say, mature region for tourism. Our tourism product has been around a while, and we're very well known. So it is some of these structural components like infrastructure and workforce housing that are really like, and transportation are our greatest challenges right now. I think the only difference would be we do have some communities in the region that receive less kind of, I think it might have been John who mentioned, you know, the dispersal. Well, that part of it is seasonality, but part of it is getting people around the region. And so the eastern part of the Gorge is definitely a softer tourism product, as well as the Estacada area, and there's a lot more opportunity. So like getting a hotel, a small hotel, traditional lodging, if you will, in Estacada would be great for Estacada to make it more of an overnight location and have stronger investment there. And I think helping like the Dalles and Duffer have, I don't even know what to describe, but just have a stronger draw and identity to compete with Hood River, which is so close, and that's where everybody goes, and potentially that's where you saw a $600 room night. But yeah, there's opportunities to help, I think, product development in our lesser visited communities to help spread the current pressure areas that we have.
Okay, and John, you called out, like, I know you were saying things like tour guides or the visitor center are kind of old way of kind of looking at it. What else do you see from the modern perspective? Like, where is it going? What would you like? What kind of products and capabilities would you like seeing going into the future?
We don't need products and capability. we're like Lizzie again hit the nail on the head. We're sold out. You guys don't need to spend any more money on marketing and widening Kennedy cartoons and all that kind of stuff. We're going to get to the point where the experience starts degrading, and then the word gets out and people will stop coming. And that all hinges on workforce housing. And if we don't have workforce housing, we can't support or develop any infrastructure because there's no place for people to live.
How about environmentally? Like, what are the impacts there?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, things just, there's, you know, if there's not enough restrooms, parking facilities, you know, waste, garbage cans, all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, things get dirty and gross pretty quick. I mean, it's, on the Mirror Lake Trail 2 summers ago, they brought out 13 garbage bags of dog waste. You know, it's really sad, and there's just not the infrastructure to support maintenance and responsible management of all these wonderful resources.
One thing we've seen emerge throughout the pandemic is that certain, especially am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Sorry, on my end, I was hearing a bunch of static. Throughout the pandemic, certain activities and destinations in Oregon and in the state of Washington have become by reservation and permit only. I'm not sure that that's the ideal solution. You know, as John is indicating, I think the ability to accommodate more people and to do it well and sustainably probably is the best outcome. But in the interim, regulating the number of people through permits, reservation may be one possibility.
And when you say permit means what? Like how do you take that? Yeah.
Well, for example, I was going to take my family to Ape Caves in Washington. And in order to access that site, I had to have an online reservation that I had made ahead of time. And they checked my reservation number when I got there to make sure that I indeed made the reservation.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to throw in a few thoughts about this as well. Definitely just the capacity of our sites and parking of our sites for both National Forest sites and state park sites within the Gorge. We are at capacity. I mean, almost every weekend we're at and over capacity, both to handle parking. So we have overflow parking all along the roads and causing safety issues in the Gorge, on the State Route 14, on Interstate 84, along the historic highway corridor. I'm just speaking in generalities. So that really is a challenge we have, as some folks have mentioned. We have used permit systems like at Multnomah Falls, at Dog Mountain, the Gifford Pinchot, Ape Caves, and Lewis River Corridor, and others. That may become something that is we might have to go to, but I think we need a more strategic approach in how we do that. And also, it's very it's not. I would say that it costs a lot of money to make that system sustainable, especially if these sites aren't fee sites where we're able to collect funds to offset the staff to do that work. The other thing that I would mention in the aspects of communication, agree that we probably don't need a lot more marketing of the Gorge, but our challenge has been trying to reach the visitors that this is kind of the level of planning in the Gorge. They wake up Saturday morning and it's sunny in Portland, and they decide to go hiking in the Gorge, and that literally is sometimes the extent of planning that folks go through. So we're struggling to reach that group, especially when we have messaging around responsible recreation, around the permit system, the options to ride transit, and in our shuttle systems that have come on board in the Gorge. So how do we capture that group of folks that do very little planning? Some may or may not have a lot of experience in the outdoors, so a lot of search and rescues occur in the Gorge. I know in Mount Hood area, as a result, impacts those local county services. Some of our places are so congested you can't even get EMS resources in a timely manner. So it is a challenge for us in the Gorge and in other places along the urban front. And again, it is a challenge. So and it's a tough one that we haven't quite figured out yet.
Yeah. Okay. I think let's do a quick prioritization here on some of the thoughts that we have captured. Let's kind of go through that. Let's go one by one and look at what goes in high. So we have high urgency, low feasibility. What is, I mean, the whole idea is it is urgent, but maybe very difficult to execute or take longer time to execute. We have high urgency, high feasibility, low urgency, low feasibility, which is, I mean, we'll see if there's something low. We'll go one by one. Let's look at workforce and housing. Where would you take that? The first one.
I would say high urgency, low feasibility, because it's harder.
Okay. Then we had I can't read that fully. It's a little too small for me. Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting one, regulating the number of visitors. This is more, I think this is much more, is it high urgency or low urgency? What do you think? I was thinking of it more, this is feasible, so it's highly feasible according to me. I mean, I'm just taking it from my side. What do you think? It's already there, Matt, you were talking about?
I was gonna say, from Stan's perspective, it's very difficult to do. So I'm not sure if the feasibility is as high. It was a very unique scenario to be able to do it for Multnomah Falls, but
Okay.
I'll let a land manager provide feedback on that.
So we go with, again, same high urgency, low feasibility. Yeah,
Maybe
let's
somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think Emily, you've had it. Yeah. Better wayfinding for people in transportation, park and ride.
And I know, to Lizzie's point, this might go along with supporting those people that come in the city and educating them. So.
Any hand going, where do we take this? Better wayfinding. I think, John, you were of the point that wayfinding is not much of a concern, yeah? Or I think, Lizzie, you mentioned it.
I put a comment in the chat. At first I said, we have relatively good wayfinding off of our main highways, I think, but what's missing, kind of to the point that there's so many people in our outdoor recreation areas, is those people don't always stop in our communities. And so better wayfinding from outdoor recreation to direct people, like downtown government camp, call it downtown government camp, is, across the street, and you can get beer and food, or just directing people from recreation to a stop somewhere to spend money before they go home. And that's in particular for the onslaught of day visitors, is a need that I see.
Again, high frequency, low yeah, it goes here. Yeah, according to me, yeah. What do you think, Lizzie? Are we at the right place?
I think a lot of these are going to be lower feasibility, because if they were easy, they'd be done.
Yeah. From what I understand, wayfinding is challenging in our, especially in our outdoor recreation areas. So I think it's a low feasibility, high urgency.
Establish more lodging opportunities, hotels, and more. Again, I think it's
high urgency, low feasibility.
Yeah. Creating hotels and motels is not an easy task. I think more activities in the off season. I feel it's the way it gets promoted. How do you create dispersion? It is high urgency, and it is. What do you say, Eileen? What do you have to say? I know more activities, it's easy to kind of start marketing them.
I don't know that it's high urgency. But I don't know how feasible it is to Matt's point. If these things were really feasible, they'd be done. But I can see sometimes here in my community in the Dalles, there are people that just haven't thought about it. Our chambers work hard to do things. So I would say it was low urgency, maybe medium feasibility.
I think I would say the same. I mean, if you look like at our ski resorts, particularly, well, actually all three of them, at their core, a very seasonal, like winter product, but they've done a really good job at building out product to extend that season. So there are activities in the summer and fall now. So if they can do it, why can't everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it becomes like the place is more popular for a certain reason, so that takes prominence about everything else. The knowledge around other things is not as available, or people don't associate it as strongly, and hence it becomes like, if you think of Banff in Alberta region here, it is known for its skiing resorts, and like so people just come during winters there, but they have done a good job of kind of breaking down some of the activities now in the summer, and they have started promoting it, whether it is hiking or whether it is mountain biking, and all of that has become a prominent activity a lot more over a period of time.
I mean, the Gorge does have some very good museums, which certainly,
yes, so I
during
think
the winter season, one could enjoy. One would just need to drive here, you know, and be willing to drive in where there might be some inclement
I think that's a
weather.
good point. I think promoting museums or kind of having museum as one of the kind of product is, I feel like fits into it. I think I would include that definitely, like museum coming in as a product that can be sold. I can, Emily, I think we can include promoting museum, or kind of having museum as a product for
Off
which
season.
can be, yeah.
Okay, I'll just add that to this note here.
Infrastructure, transportation, signage, and parking.
So I just want to make a comment on the museum piece, and I'm not sure that we have anybody here from those today. One of the challenges becomes promoting things where those facilities may not have the staff or the resources to operate during that off season. So Lizzie, maybe, you know, trying to crosswalk with those groups to find out what would support look like to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the other pieces that was striking me as John was talking about infrastructure, and I don't know where this fits, Bhupesh, is there are different groups that are not the tourism groups, for example. So there are the economic development districts that work on their comprehensive economic development strategies. And I think there's a couple of different ones for this region. This is one of those areas, I think, trying to figure out how to crosswalk what this group is talking about with what they're doing would be somewhat helpful. Because especially on some of the housing conversation, obviously this group won't fix that, but what John talked about, what others have talked about, how do the communities integrate around affordable housing, whether you had tourism or not? And so it feels to me like there needs to be some crosswalk with the other entities that are working on those things.
Mm-hmm. I think we can have that as I think I'll take collaboration of tourism and economic development. It can be it's low urgency but high feasibility, according to me.
Right there.
In infrastructure, I would put in high urgency and maybe middle feasibility.
Sorry, Bill, that's the second time you got cut off. It's not me, it's the technology.
You can blame me. Just blame me. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you have some good discussion with the team. So we're going to do a little bit of a share back, similar to our last exercise, but I believe our facilitators volunteered someone from your group to do the key highlights. So you don't need to read the whole Jamboard. We'll share it on the screen as well, so you can refer to it. But just anything that really stuck out from your discussion. We'll maybe give each person a minute or two, and then we'll hear from each team and then have a quick break. So I'm going to start with yourself, Bhupesh, and I think Emily's going to share the Jamboard for you. Who did you select from your team?
I didn't, but I'm selecting it now. I'll have Lizzie. She is the most
Lizzie.
popular.
Lizzie, you are the lucky one.
A key theme is perhaps we have a lot of high urgency needs that are low feasibility. So there's a lot of challenges and really structural, like big challenges to tourism, in particular in our region. And I think Matt from Estacada said something to the effect of, well, if it was easy to do, they would have already been done. So yeah, they're not easy things to do. Yeah, that was kind of the core of our conversation.
I think one of the big factor was the infrastructure overall. Like every conversation goes around infrastructure, and that's one thing that makes it challenging and feasibility wise. Like, how do we really make it happen?
Great. Thank you, Lizzie and Bhupesh and team. William, what about your team?
I also forgot to nominate someone, but I think Emily would probably be up to the task. If you don't mind, Emily, if you can give us a quick summary of what we talked about. I'll share my screen.
Thank you. I was worried you were going to call me because I think I talked too much, but I'm just going to say what Lizzie said and then be done. We talked a lot about affordable housing and the ability for transit to save the world. And just a lot about also pulling folks further east and how that's a huge opportunity and also pretty feasible. So we did find some easy wins that we think we could jump on and also outreach to the community.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, do you have anything to add?
No, it was really interesting when Bhupesh said infrastructure. I probably would have done the same thing. And also the dependencies, right? Because social affordable housing for staff, right, would be greatly enhanced with public transportation. So, and when we're talking about dispersion away from congested trails, again, it's having better transportation systems could really help with these things as well. That was the dependencies was really interesting to note.
Thanks, William and team. Rebecca, what about your team?
Yeah, we had some similar discussions for sure. I'm going to share my screen and John is going to go over it with you. I'll try and zoom in so you can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Our common denominator was that there are an awful lot in the high urgency / low feasibility quadrant there. I think a lot has already been said. What we really recognized is that this pivot from destination marketing to destination management is exactly where Travel Oregon and all of the DMOs, M meaning management, need to be. We also discussed the need for workforce housing, affordable workforce housing, the congestion throughout the Gorge and on the mountain and the 26 corridor. I would hope that Travel Oregon actively support projects that are actually in the works at this time, including the vision around the mountain, connecting our public transit, better accommodating the visitor parking. There is currently a transit center study going on through Clackamas County that would place a large transit center somewhere in the vicinity of Government Camp. A gondola link to Timberline Lodge from Government Camp is in Timberline's master plan, and this opens up all sorts of opportunity for new services in Government Camp to really make it the classic ski town, the Chamonix of the Hood Gorge area, if you will. All your support services are there. And a new and improved rest area is a project that Oregon Solutions is currently working on, would be a huge improvement. We also talked about accessibility by removing barriers to entry for newcomers and embracing those people, recognizing that the recreational experience, whether you're skiing or biking or whatever, is really expensive. And it's the price of equipment and everything else that a visit requires. Let's see. We identified a need for basic education of basic outdoor recreation skills that we've taken for granted. That aren't quite so prevalent in today's society. And there was an interesting conversation about itinerary building for our tour guides for specific interests, and then being able to cross-promote those to other areas to sort of collaborate and work together. I think that's pretty much what we talked about, Rebecca.
You got it. Thank you so much, Sean. That was excellent. Thank you.
Yes, great summary. And sounds like you had a lot of really good discussion. So thank you, John, Rebecca, and team. Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Shannon. So Marley has spoken up in the chat that she will share our group's findings. Thank you so much, Marley.
No problem. So our group was mainly all in the Gorge. So we talked a lot about the Gorge region or the Gorge section of our region, I should say. And, you know, one of the things that we talked a lot about was promoting the eastern side of the Gorge more, and maybe enhancing some of our promotional materials to really educate people on how the Gorge is more than just the waterfalls. It is that eastern area as well as the Washington side. And so getting those visitors to go past Hood River. We also talked about visitor education, as well as, you know, transient community education on littering and keeping our areas clean. We talked a lot about public transit and cars and rail and trolleys and what is the best solution, you know, for the whole Gorge region, and how do we, you know, this highway was historically developed as a car tourism mode of getting through the Gorge, and now all of our cars are bigger and our desire to travel is larger, and so many more of us are on that road. And so how do we keep it safe? How do we increase our wayfinding and our maps? How do we explain to visitors that there's more than just Multnomah Falls, and that there's lots of things to do? How do we increase the highway safety with the narrow roads in certain areas? We talked a lot about, well, we talked about another airport, but that's not feasible. And we talked about cleanup programs, and I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I missed. Oh, and then the aligned language and making sure that, you know, when we are talking about the Gorge, that we don't just refer to it as the waterfall area, and that we really do include the whole stretch of it.
Thanks, Marley and team. Collaborative effort there. Amy, anything to add there from your side?
That was great. Thank you, Marley.
Great. I think we got everybody. William, Rebecca, Bupesh, Amy. All right. Great. Well, that is part one of this exercise. I think this is a good time to take a quick break. So if you want to come back in 10 minutes, that would be great. So that allow you time to get some fresh air, check your emails if you want to, grab a snack. So we'll come back at 3:50. So we'll see you soon. Welcome back. Hope you had a good break. We'll get going in just a minute.
Ready to roll, Shannon?
Yes. Am I sharing my screen? No, I'm not. Oh. All right. So quick setup, essentially very similar exercise, but this time we're going to focus solely on promotion. So what are those opportunities for through the lens of social, economic, and environment? You know, what are the stories we want to promote, the experiences, what do we over promote, not promote enough? So yes, we'll go back into our breakout sessions. And William, is there anything else you wanted to add here before we go back into it?
No, good setup.
All right, so Emily will send you back into your breakout sessions and you'll have a discussion and we'll come back and discuss.
Okay. Oh, our group has become shorter, smaller. Awesome. Okay, so we are back to our Jamboard. Now the topic has changed. We are not talking about capabilities or product. We are looking at promotion. How do we want to communicate to the residents or to the visitors, and what do we want to communicate to them? We know our challenges. We have heard infrastructure is a challenge, congestion is a challenge. Do we want to do any kind of communication or promotion around it? Do we want to promote our place? So that's the discussion. I mean, I know I heard in our previous kind of discussion that we don't want to promote our place. There is already so much of congestion. So if we are not promoting the place, what are we promoting and how do we want to promote? To both. We have heard some of the other concerns around littering or not keeping the place clean and all of those things. And again, I want to have a bit of a conversation around how do we address that and what do we want to do with that? Who wants to take the lead this time? Do we need to do any campaign of any kind? So yeah.
Somebody else should take the lead. This is my full-time job.
I do have most of my skills here, yeah.
But promote is how people, how we'd like people to behave once they get to a region. Etiquette, perhaps, or maybe some of the smaller things to do. Using example, like let folks know there are some smaller museums. There's smaller music venues.
Sorry, Aline, you're breaking up a little bit for me. I don't know if it was for everyone. There was a small kind of break. What you were saying, I continued it, yeah.
Basically, I said maybe educating people on how we'd like them to act once they got here, maybe some etiquette, or letting them know about different opportunities to do things. Let them know about maybe that there are taxis in the Dalles and in Hood River, or where, you know, some of the alternatives, about those things.
Yeah, I think behavior change is a big one. And kind of to that end, it's I think, you know, it's that people can't, the ways that people have access places is going to have to change. You can't just always just get it in your car without planning ahead and know that you're just going to be able to go where you want to go. So I think it's that planning ahead piece too with it, which is a behavior in itself, but just knowing that you need to make those plans and do your research beforehand, or at least, you know, that needs to be messaged to visitors.
And how can we facilitate that? Any suggestions?
I mean, there are resources now for that. It's just, they're not reaching, I think they're not reaching tourists or visitors, or even a lot of local residents don't know about those resources. So it's, I think, rethinking those, because those messages are there, they exist.
Yeah, I think Valerie makes a good point in even saying that locals don't even really know about them. I think it would be really interesting to start some of the communication and promotion internally with our residents before it's pushed wider externally. You know, part of it is because, you know, people even just within our region visit our region. You know, a lot of people in the Gorge are going up to Mount Hood in the winter, and I mean, there's less people who live on the mountain, but people on the mountain do go to the Gorge as well. So I think there is a lot of value and opportunity in talking to residents and training them on, you know, what they need to know about their own recreation, because then they're also good examples for visitors when they come. And then they also then know about the resources if they then work in the industry, you know, in a visitor facing role of any kind, and can help communicate that out. I also, I think that a shift in promotion in our region from outdoor recreation to other, anything other, because as was mentioned, it's, you know, John from Timberline was on here and talking about, you know, no more marketing, but if, well, Stan lives in the Dalles, he probably doesn't want more marketing, but I think for tourism businesses in the Dalles, they would say more marketing. And Estacada appreciates more marketing. And so some of the downtown areas would definitely appreciate more promotion, but I think we're looking at how are we supporting the businesses in these places, other than just outdoor recreation, because that's already over capacity. So I think there's, you know, museums were mentioned, which is great. So that, like, there's also extremely strong arts communities throughout the whole region. And so tapping into artists and what they're doing, and then food is really strong in the region. And we've got a bunch of food trails. There you go, agriculture and tourism, exactly. And those then also, you know, you can go to a farm and you can connect that to a restaurant as well, or a brewery. And there's a lot of nice connections to build out experiences and storytelling. And then I also think there's a lot more that we can do around the kind of the, how do I say this? I think a lot more of the native and like original stories of the area. I think there's a lot of unique storytelling that we have not tapped into. You know, the Oregon Trail is part of our region, and we know that story. We know what the experience is in the region, and there's opportunities to tell it, but I don't think we've done the best job yet in helping to share the tribal story in our area, if that's something that wants to be shared. And I know that there's a lot of great work that's done with the Columbia Gorge Discovery Center and Museum. So I think that's a good place to start. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I would add, in terms of educating the locals, is that if we educated the local businesses as to what's going on. So, you know, we've all been here when you're traveling someplace and you are grocery store or in a cafe and you ask, oh, what is there to do? Sometimes you get a really helpful person and, well, I don't know, I just so getting local folks to know what there is to recommend and how to get there, how to use the taxi service. I have to say, I have never taken the taxi service here in the Dalles. I know somebody that has, but I've never done it myself. And also, I had this is a slide that I thought of after our last session. I brought a group of my Portland colleagues out to the Dalles for a retreat, and there were a few people that were very surprised we didn't have Uber or Lyft out here. So I don't know. That would also create some local jobs, and I don't know how that works.
And there was another factor that was there, and when we were talking of the vision statement as well, the whole notion of diversity. And I'm just kind of wondering, does it needs to be communicated? Does it needs to be addressed in any way? Does it exist? And I know there were a lot of questions being raised on that specific word as well. Two of the words which I would like to kind of, we have addressed a little bit of sustainable piece to it here, but what are the thoughts around sustainability and diversity? And how can we communicate that?
What do you mean communicating sustainability and diversity? Like,
I know you in fact, you raised one of the point about welcoming people, and and I'm just kind of trying to think through that as well, as to what is the concern there? Is it the diversity? Is it anything? What are some of the pain points there around diversity, or around welcoming to people, or welcoming different types of people to the community? And does it needs to be addressed?
I mean, I would, besides, there is a large Latinx population in the Gorge. The region is quite white, which is similar to most of Oregon, but, you know, still different than like a Portland metro area. And there have been incidences in communities in the region, you know, mostly between locals, but people of color and white people that have not been great experiences. And so I think there's, you know, I think our region is still, there's communities, there are residents in the region that are still not as welcoming as they should be. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, my concern is the promise of Oregon being a welcoming state and somebody coming and not having that same experience. I have friends in other states who have no interest in visiting Oregon, and they're people of color, because they view it as an unwelcoming state.
So what would you tell them? What would be your message to them? If you have to change anything in your messaging, if you have to kind of make them feel comfortable, make them feel welcoming, what would you tell them?
I don't have that answer.
No. Yeah, no.
So I guess as an observation, I think what I hear Lizzie saying, it's not what we would tell them so that they would come visit. It's what do we really need to do as a community, as a state, to change our behaviors and and acknowledge the culture and the history that underlies that perception. And so what I'm almost hearing you say, Lizzie, is we shouldn't be welcoming a diversity of visitors until we're ready to put the work in to help those communities, the businesses, the resources grow in their understanding and welcoming spirit.
And thank you, Lynn. You're so good at that.
Yeah. And Lynn, so and I love this conversation here because I think it opens up quite a few possibilities. And a change needs to be made internally in terms of our own community, in terms of our own story we tell. And I think so we need to create communication around that. We need to kind of say that story. Do you think it's missing at present completely, or is it there in bits and pieces and more needs to be done, and in what way?
I believe it's becoming there in bits and pieces. I think there's some other folks on this conversation who probably have more perception around that. Stan, I don't know if you want to jump in as a long-term resident, but I think there is some acknowledgement both of the history of the state and, you know, what has created some of the embodiments that are there. The current governor obviously has a huge focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The legislature has the Legislative Commission on Indian Services, for example. It strikes me that there is also a fairly large group of people whose view is it's just what it is, you know, and they're not interested in having some of those conversations. So I think the stories there in bits and pieces. I would have a hard time encouraging people. Let me frame it different. It's even for workplace. It was hard for me sometimes to encourage people of diverse backgrounds to want to apply for a job to come work in certain areas. But that's their choice. And the thing that we have to do is be honest about it, I guess, what that experience is.
And do you see this as a more of a public campaign around that to kind of really start having that conversations all across and making people who are living in different provinces or different states to feel more comfortable around that? Yeah.
So I think that's the challenging piece where, again, I would look to other folks. Like in the Portland area, there's a facilitated forum called Race Talks that brings people together to have that conversation. And it was started, you know, by folks. There's actually some conversations that happen over in Eastern Oregon. It's not clear to me how to best incorporate that in the travel tourism communications.
I think at times even a simple thing like having diverse representation of people in your material is a small start, but at least it creates conversations and it creates a little bit more empathy. How about, we talked about congestion a little bit as an issue, and I know we talked about promoting some of the other things, some of the other areas like museum or even like food becoming an important piece, art becoming an important piece. How about transportation? How about promoting other pieces of transportation? Any thoughts on that? Is it widely used? Is it still like opportunity to do something?
There's transportation. I can go start and then Stan, you can go. But at least the public transportation services, they go to key areas, but they don't go everywhere. And they're not only serving visitors, but residents, workers, people who don't have access to a vehicle, who need to access services. So they're serving the communities too. That's also a priority. They are used, but they are also still, at least in the Gorge side, it's pretty new. On the Mount Hood side, that service is a bit older as well. So but there still are a lot of people who don't know, and I'm kind of referring more to residents, that those services do exist. And there are gaps in some services in terms of seasonality or just the times of day that services are offered. And like I had mentioned, also just where they go. They're predominantly on the major corridors, but you're not going to be able to take public transportation to more remote or distant areas. So, and just because of some of the geography of the area, like larger buses just can't access destinations either.
And I'm just kind of telling one of the things that I had seen at one of my previous places. I used to live in Alberta. I mean, we were facing congestion as well. They ran a campaign around biking and cycling to work, and that was to kind of reduce congestion on the road. Really, like especially in short distance, it was. How is that culture there? Is it infrastructure, and can it be promoted?
That's like a work in progress right now. There is, at least in the Gorge, there is a state trail. It's not fully connected, but it should be, I think, maybe in the next 10 or so years. But it's not for everyone. It's not short distances either. And oftentimes that itself is the recreational activity. So, I mean, you know, and I think it's just a pretty small, so it's a pretty small group of people, relatively speaking, who are using like
Stan, you had a point. I think
actually I wasn't gonna didn't have anything to add to the transportation thing, but I wanted to kind of, and hopefully I don't derail the conversation here, but wanted to respond a little bit to what Lynn was talking about and what Lizzie was talking about way earlier, and I'll go to that first. I think one of the challenges in the Gorge is how do we, I mean, we get a lot of visitation, but how do we promote visitation within the communities that aren't realizing the benefit of this increase in tourism? And Lizzie named a whole bunch of stuff that would help that, and there's a number of folks who have been working on this for some time, but it's still a dilemma. It's still a challenge to balance. How do you promote an area without promoting the area, right? We don't need any more recreation. I heard earlier that let's promote the eastern part of the Gorge. Well, that's not a secret anymore. On any spring day, near a recreation site, we're overflowing onto the highways. So it's that challenge to balance it. In respect to Lynn's thing, I don't know how to solve it. The issue with diversity and inclusion, it's been a challenge for all of my career and Lynn's career, and but I think the Gorge is uniquely positioned to maybe make some sizable movements there. We're close to the urban area. We span urban and rural areas. So we're uniquely positioned to maybe work on that piece. Again, I don't know what the answers are, but I think we have an opportunity in the Gorge to make some movement there. So I just wanted to add that stuff. And as Valerie said, there's been a lot of work on transportation here in the Gorge as of late, and with a lot of different ideas and strategies and solutions. And it's really beginning to take hold in a lot of places.
Emily, I think we lost the screen. No
Sorry
issues.
about that, guys. Trying to where it is. Oh, there we go. We're good.
I was gonna add to the transportation communication part. Oh my God, now my brain's farting. No, I remember. Oh gosh, 60 seconds. The actual like in community cycling, because you had mentioned cycling. is not terribly safe and could use a lot more work in terms of adding bike lanes. So there's outside of the communities, there's the historic highway, or there's mountain biking trails like up on the mountain. But the safety factor of people getting around in town on bikes is not really a thing yet. There's still a lot of safety issues there. And I would also mention, just to second what Valerie was saying, like for transportation on the Mount Hood Express, there is research that we did with Travel Oregon on that, and most people along the Highway 26 corridor had no idea that that transportation existed. So a lot of communication opportunity.
You.
I could go out and bring in a chicken.
Bringing a chicken. I like it.
He's got really cute chickens.
Yeah. Oh, never heard of pet chicken. Are they in the house or outside the house?
Well, they come in the house pretty regularly. My wife Annie, we actually have chickie sleepover nights on Friday nights where we have a thing and put the roost down, and yeah, they sleep with us on Friday. Yeah, yeah. I started it. I can't stop it.
William's asking about what we're talking about. His pet chickens, in-house pet chickens.
I think my wife can't hear. She would love it.
Well, you just got a dog, so let's just take it one step at a time.
True.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had some good discussion. Very similar to our last shareback. Well, I think hopefully this time someone was volunteered in each group, and we'll do a little bit of a quick shareback and then go into our final exercise of the day. So Amy, let's start with you.
First time claim first. I thought you were saving the best for last.
Well, you know, or the best for first, you know.
Of course. So I'll pull up my screen to share, and Marley's going to do it again for us because she did such a great job the first time. She has lots of cheerleaders cheering her on. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. Oh, no, wait. Okay. I'm going to do that. Sorry. Marley.
I'm gonna wait until are we able to get it a little bit more zoomed in? So that
I can, you know what I can do? How's that?
That's better. Yeah. So we talked a lot about it all stems from what we talked about previously. So again, one of the big ones was promoting those low impact road trips to the eastern areas, those wide open spaces, making sure our messaging is not just around the waterfalls, especially when we're talking about the gorge, really expanding that. Another thing we talked about was promoting to the bicycling groups, the best, they're great tourists. They, always want to spend money, which is nice, and increasing that biking infrastructure. So those bike hubs, the bike storage at hotels, that's really targeted at, people who have those really expensive bicycles and are worried about the safety of those. We did talk about some of the issues with that as well, though, because again, we're all competing for space on a very small, narrow road. And that can get really difficult on the weekends. So maybe coming up with certain days where, it's just biking days, or those midweek bike trips. We also talked a lot about our communities and making sure that we sort of educate our communities on the importance of the tourism industry, and that, that our businesses also have an understanding about the importance of our communities. Like, it's a symbiotic relationship between all of these groups, and trying to come up with ways where our communities feel included. So understanding that wineries aren't elitist, and that we can do promotions in other languages. Maybe we come up with resident incentive programs, like special passes or discounts, so they can use some of these tourist attractions that are in their communities that they might not always have access to because there's tourists there all the time. So creating some programs for them, and I don't remember what the last one is there on the bottom, but oh yeah, connecting to our community with promoting the arts and the heritage. So a lot of times we talk about the natural environment, especially in our area, because there is so many amazing things to do in the natural environment, but remembering all of the special arts and culture that are in all of our communities and helping promote that as well.
Awesome, Marley. Thank you.
Thanks, Marley team. Really great suggestions. Bhupesh, what about your team?
Well, who should I pick? I forgot again. I mean, not forgot. I mean, there was a lot of conversation happening, so we couldn't even do our mapping.
That's okay.
I think I'll, Lizzie, should I go back to you, or Valerie, you want to take up this time?
She's saying no. Who was the other? You say
Valerie is a great
Valerie?
suggestion.
Valerie, you up to it?
All right, I'll do it. I'll jump in.
Thank you.
Give Lizzie a break. All right, so we talked about, in terms of promotion, we started with kind of talking about the behavior change piece, and in terms of, if we're going to get people to do what we want them to do, we need to really be able to share that information with them in terms of, and that was really kind of focused on the transportation piece and planning ahead, ensuring that visitors know to plan ahead. They can't just get into their car, they need to do their research first. There was also ideas around promoting a shift from strictly or solely outdoor recreation to other activities or opportunities. So going to be visiting other communities that are less visited. Agritourism is another opportunity there as well. Then kind of going to the idea of not really promoting an area. So if you're looking at the pink stickies, how do you promote an area without promoting an area? Because these areas are overvisited, they don't really need more promotion. So that it goes kind of back to the behavior change and the planning ahead. And so the promotion is really that, the sharing of that information so that visitors have access to the information they need so that they can plan a trip and have a good experience. Let's see. Yeah, there was just kind of that piece of just promoting lesser known venues that kind of ties into the shift from solely outdoor recreation to other opportunities. So museums, smaller towns, just smaller businesses, local businesses as well. Food, art, breweries, and also helping to share more history, tribal stories, the heritage of the areas, just to kind of make it as a promotional way for people to really understand the importance of these areas and of this land. And that in turn can also influence their own behavior and their respect of the places that they are visiting. And another issue that we talked about that we really didn't have much of a solution to is kind of the piece of being welcoming to diverse groups, because there are, for people of color, there are people of color who just don't even want to visit Oregon because of the negative stereotypes in terms of just like the racist history throughout the state. And you can't, and this was, I think that the question was posed, well, how can we convince them to come? And you can't, because that is, those are facts. And so you can't say this isn't an issue when it is. So and that was kind of an area where there needs to be a lot more work and education on for really like locals and residents first, and start there to really move on. But obviously this has been an issue for generations, but that is another area that we really kind of were stumped with. But it's just, yeah, it's one of those that's going to take a while, but I think a lot of these things will too. So I think that's it. If I missed anything, feel free to jump in, someone else.
You did an awesome job. You captured everything.
All right.
Thanks, Valerie. Thank you, question team. Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And Tara has been voluntold.
I think the biggest thing was education and finding a way to communicate what's important and how to outdoors, I guess. You know, there's a bunch of opportunities there. Somebody mentioned the Iceland Visitor Pledge, which uses humor and teasing, or not teasing, but kind of light, like don't do it this way, do it this way. Trying to stay away from shame, but humor and trying to get people to do the right thing and giving them options to choose the right thing. We talked a lot about, you know, waste, both human and animal, and, you know, appropriate disposal. So thought a lot about how we can get the word out. Talked about spreading that peak. Weekends are packed, weekdays not so much. Seasonality, let's see here. Talking about how to bring in transportation, say riding the bus or alternative transportation modes, as selling it as part of the experience instead of a way to get there. So if you ride a bus, you know, the ride is part of your trip. It's part of the experience. You get to look out the window. You don't have to worry about parking. You have to worry about your car getting broken into, all that stuff. Talked a little bit about snow parks and how limited they are in capacity. How to promote transportation routes, providing information for travelers to make good decisions. There's a lot of sunk costs that people don't necessarily consider when they get in their car versus getting on a transit vehicle. So maybe somehow portraying what those costs are, at least providing people that information and then letting them make decisions in line with their values. I think that's it, unless Rebecca, you wanted me to touch on anything else.
No, I think that was great. Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Tara and team. William, I think you're last.
All right, we got Aaron who is going to do the honors. Go ahead.
Only because Emily left, so. Can you, oh, here, let me move this real quick. Yeah, so on the social side, kind of promoting to the residents the value of tourism, and that came up in our last discussion as well, in the last breakout session, of kind of getting them involved as well. Promoting cultures of each place, inclusivity, definitely trying to narrow down each place. We talked about how just Oregon as a whole is just so diverse. There's so many different things. So trying to promote Oregon and then get your area in there sometimes gets lost in the noise. So really kind of promoting your individual place with its own voice. This came up in other people I saw, educating people on how to be a responsible guest, promoting car-free travel. Was number 5. Itineraries to encourage dispersion as well. We talked about the infinity loop a little bit, high occupancy areas of overuse. We also got into a tangent discussion about how most of the things in here, these are all our ideas, so it's all usually high urgency and high feasibility. So we put ice cream at every trailhead, handed out by the trailhead ambassadors, just as something that's a low feasibility. But William, actually, I think we should probably move that to high urgency because it's ice cream. There you go. Also under environmental, educating people on how to be a responsible guest, a responsible traveler. Again, promoting car-free travel kind of fell under social and environmental. Also on the trails, promoting voluntourism. Katie, I think you came up with that one. And then again on economical, branded bus lines. Where's the, can you scroll down a bit? I don't think I can see all the economical ones. There was the one that Kaylee had that was really good.
Okay, I don't know. Okay.
It was the,
can you see it now?
Oh, no, sorry, there we go. Sorry, it was number 9 on social. Kind of a high priority is the accessible, yep, I got it. Accessible experiences and transportation, mainly meaning, again, kind of diversity, equity, inclusion, making sure that we're marketing, which areas are ADA friendly, which areas are accessible, things, the Spanish language signage kind of played into that as well. And then also, I think this was talked about earlier, also recognizing the idea that just marketing it to different groups doesn't necessarily mean that they will go, is kind of understanding as well, not just how to market to them or marketing to them in general, but also understanding if they want to go, why they would or wouldn't want to go. And so I think that involves promotion and education on both sides.
Thanks, Aaron.
That was it. Yep.
Great. Thank you, group. William. All right, so we are going to head into our final exercise, and we just have a little bit time left. I want to keep it in the main room this time for an open discussion. Just bear with me while I get my screen up, and I'll turn it over to William to set us up.
Are you going to share your screen or am I sharing mine?
Oh, I'm not sharing, am I? It's end of day for me. Sorry. Okay. There we
So
go.
the last topic that we want to talk about, and we can do it as a group in the last 10 minutes or so, is about attracting visitors. So what kind of visitors do we need to meet our goals? And we're not necessarily talking about specific geographic areas or whatnot, but maybe we're talking about certain types of travelers, certain niche markets, whether it's niche interests. We're talking about psychographics. We talked about responsible visitors, for example, right? That seems to be, that was shining through already loud and clear in the earlier exercises. So thinking about it a little bit, we use this model, which comes from Blue Ocean Strategy. And so we have your current market, on our tier 1 is what kind of markets are we currently developing that we think are, ready to attract soon. Then we have our tier 2, which are our low priority markets, which are the type of visitors that we're, maybe not as interested in. Maybe they're perfect for another place. I'm thinking maybe cruise passengers might not be the best market. And then the last one, the unexplored. What are some wild ideas out there that's, might be interesting to think about, but we really haven't, never really considered looking at these kind of markets. So again, open the floor or use the chat. Who thinks, let's start with niches, who thinks what kind of niche markets might be a good fit for this part of Oregon?
Well, I'll say something if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I am wondering about the future in regards to restoring more international visitors. The situation here now, William, you might not know this, up in BC, we're overrun, and we have this brain trust together. It's sort of interesting. I wanted to ask people. I mean, ironically, although I understand it, during COVID, our visitation skyrocketed, particularly in relation to outdoor recreation. And I think particularly related to local visitors, meaning Portland. We're largely an urban forest, Portland's backyard, if you will. I've been at Timberline 37 years. I've never seen anything like it. My question is, I wonder what this group thinks. If there's such a thing as post-COVID, you know what I mean, when people sort of get back to normal, do you think that is going to continue? Do you think it's going to hold strong? Do you think it's going to continue up? Or are we going to be looking at a big downturn? I don't know if any thoughts on that?
It's a great question.
I can maybe chime in a bit on that, just having been involved with some of the recreation management conversations that have been going on in the last little bit. But while we've seen a bit of a COVID spike, definitely those spikes that was increasing prior to COVID. So going back 5 years.
Yeah, population growth.
Yeah, and it's more related to population growth and in migration of folks rather than there's maybe more opportunities for folks to go out in the last 18 months, but a lot of those folks we're going to be going out anyway. So there's more information on that I would need to dig up in order to be a little bit more specific.
You're saying that you're saying it isn't as so much COVID as it is local population growth, and we're Portland's playground.
And just changes in recreation trends as well. So when the National Scenic Area was established for the Gorge, hiking was like day hikes and day trips weren't a big of a thing. The last 10 years, that's kind of been the big shift is people coming out and doing a day hike and going to go get their beer or whatever. So it shifts in what's happening as well as just the number of people that are around to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the research I see as well. That's and COVID has accelerated many trends in society, right? And one of them is to be more active outdoors. Definitely.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, the retailers will tell you that too.
Any other thoughts about particular market segments, target audiences that we should consider? Bike tourism. Thank you, Tara. Anything else along those lines?
I think, William, in our group, we had talked a lot about what we don't want to see, what is lower priority, and what the characteristics of those types of visitors are. So, John, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. No. Okay.
Anyone else? Like disrespecting the environment is something that came up in our group as well.
Yeah. Am I on mute?
No.
Oh yeah, that's what we were discussing. It was the rather shocking absence of outdoor ethic and the need to at least try to spread the leave no trace and responsibility codes of outdoor recreation. I think that's important because I think we're seeing sort of with that growing population, a new demographic. I don't know if I could draw the picture for you, but as that business has increased, boy, the problems have really increased as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, John, you were talking about, you guys were talking about all the people who are moving here from other states and other places and all the in-migration. And I think that's why the education is so important because, I grew up in Kansas. We didn't hike. You don't hike in Kansas. There's nothing to hike in Kansas. Like there's nothing to do in Kansas, but there's certain people that, they didn't grow up with that same education and they want to be a part of this outdoor. They came here for the outdoors. They came here for all the things to do. And I know that there's a lot of like outdoor recreation things that I would love to try, but I don't feel like I'm educated enough on the topics to go out and just try it. And so I think that, there's the educating on how to take care of the environment. There's education on like, how do you set up a tent or how do you cook over a campfire? It's like, there's opportunities to, I think, spread that knowledge, especially if that's something that like our area or our community values a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
I think, and that's what I hear in other places as well, that it's not necessarily that people are purposely doing the wrong things, but they just don't know, right? They're inexperienced. And quite often they'll do things that are even unsafe for themselves just because they don't know, like bring a bottle of water on a hot day. Lizzie.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking in terms of who we want to attract, and based on all the conversations, is we don't need to attract any more outdoor recreation visitors. And so it's the non-outdoor recreation visitors who we should be working towards attracting and making sure that we do have the promise of experience and product around that to serve them. And I think anything that is recreation focused should, in terms of attracting and promoting towards, should be around guided experiences. So again, that it's meeting the need to support our, the kind of the good ethics, because our guides really are great in our region, and do, follow the rules. There's permits to do that, but it's also kind of a core to who they are. And then you're supporting the economics of their business and employment, et cetera.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so on that note, are there any markets or audiences that we might never have considered, that's sort of in the unexplored category, that we should think about?
William, too, in our group, what Lizzie was talking about right now, like one of the things that also came up was things around museums and agritourism. I mean, museum was one of the pieces that was called out, like it can attract a different kind of a tourist there, and it is a lot more indoors in that case. And as well as agritourism was also kind of called out. So I know, Lynn, you talked about it, and if you want to talk about it a little bit more around museum and one of those factors, please. Yeah.
Probably not a lot to add, just the fact that there is a robust piece of agriculture. There's lots of work that's gone into that. There's ongoing activities, number of museums. One of the challenges becomes, I think, when we're marketing them, whether or not they actually have the resources to expand on those shoulder seasons. So some of them are operating hand to mouth and doing everything they can just to stay open. So maybe making the linkages there. Another piece, which I don't know that we've talked about a lot, could be some of the opportunity for cultural tours or engagements. There's a rich cultural history throughout the Gorge and up on Mount Hood area. And so there are probably some kinds of things along that line that could be done. And again, not so much the outdoor recreation, bring more hikers. I would want to make one comment too. I want to give a lot of people grace that they don't know how to behave. I would also tell you we have a lot of people who do know how to behave and intentionally don't take action. And so as you're thinking about the messaging and the marketing, I wouldn't, I think figuring out a way to leverage those people who intentionally don't pick up their dog poop, and they do know what's going on. How can you market or tell messages along that lines? And along that line, and this is not about the market, but maybe leveraging things like the Columbia Gorge Tourism Alliance, Ready Set Gorge website as a location to use. So how can these various markets use those resources? Going to stop talking now, Bhupesh.
Thanks for that, Lynn.
That's good
yeah,
stuff.
very.
I would also add to the museum piece that it can be connected with a lot of other things. The folks that are interested in museums are very likely demographically to be interested in wine and art and food. So there's an opportunity to kind of promote those things together.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay,
William,
we're gonna give John the last word.
This makes me think of one thing. There's the recent discussions, and that it might be a little illogical. Well, I'll just say it. An older demographic, perhaps. Anecdotally, anyway, we're talking about the difficulty of being at capacity weekends and holidays. Who is available on the midweek? Maybe an active, retired group demographic, if you will, would be a logical target audience. And it might also play into the, you know, the heritage traveler and so forth. Versus the weekend warrior.
Yeah, thanks for that. All right, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I'm going to ask Shannon to wrap us up.
Thanks, William. And yes, really great discussion. Always hate cutting people off, especially we're on a really good trend. I guess I would just say, if you do have any other thoughts from today's discussion, feel free to send a note to Staj at Travel Oregon, or Emily ourselves. We can, I believe she'll be sending a follow-up survey, so Travel Oregon will. So feel free to respond with any other thoughts from today's discussion. So what's next? Very quickly, we know there's lots of questions around what are we going to do with all this amazing information we got today? And that's essentially the next step is after the next week of workshops. We're just on the end of week 1. We will be distilling all of these learnings and everything we've been learning with the journey on Travel Oregon over the last, I guess, 6 months, if not more, into a strategic framework, which will essentially guide the direction for the transformational strategy. We will review that with Travel Oregon to make sure they are aligned with the framework itself. We also look at it through the lens of a racial equity impact assessment, as that is really critical in terms of how we move forward with the next 4 years and beyond. And everything that they do is through the racial equity lens. And then really for that final deliverable, the transformational strategy, we'll be presenting that in January, February of next year. And then the work begins, which what we're calling is phase 3. And this is really a preliminary step into how to really work with Travel Oregon to set some key priorities and actions out of the transformational strategy, guide the team, guide the industry, guide the stakeholders in terms of driving all of that change forward. And to William's point at the very beginning of the call, is ensure that we're staying on track with those goals. So we'll be consulting with the team after we deliver the transformational strategy and allowing Travel Oregon to carry that forward. So that's it for today. Almost 3 hours goes quickly. Really appreciate all your participation today. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Staj. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. So thanks again, everyone. Nice to see you. Hope
Thanks,
to see
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Hopefully we'll meet in person one day.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone. Thank you.